Yes, and thank you also for starting the presentation. I would like to share a few words with you. It's a little bit at the global level, but I think as you heard this morning, also at the earlier presentations, there is, I think, a very strong need actually to work on the water sector. And I think what also became quite clear from the words that were said this morning is that the water sector is... oh, should I speak up? This better? So the water sector is very important if you also look at the other sustainability development goals. And one of the things that also at least ringed my mind this morning was also mentioned that if you want to make a difference, and the biggest polluter is poverty. I think if you want to change something in poverty, it's not necessarily a monetary thing only. I think poverty also has to do with a lot of other inspirational and other sorts. And one of the things to improve actually the livelihood and the quality of life is also about education. So that's also a little bit my background. So I'm a little bit biased to that, so apologies for that. So my bias is education and water. But I would like to take you on board on a couple of points here. One, you all well known, this is a case from India. And in India, what it shows here is actually the energy needs that you need for the production of wheat and rice. So those are the two figures that you see on screen here. And those energy needs you can also translate into an economic value. So those are the costs that you have to make. And why do I think this is important for what we're talking about? We're talking about the water, energy and environmental nexus, but I also think that the water, energy and food nexus is strongly linked to that. So this is a picture of the water, energy and food nexus. And why is that there? And that is because for a lot of the production of wheat and rice, you need water. And water is being pumped up. And that pumping, that's costing energy. And by energy, it also costs investments, either in solar power that you have to generate, or it can be in the cost if you need other fuels to pump up this water. Now, why is that so interesting? That is because not only for a manager or a responsibility for a certain region that has to produce food, but also one water manager is taking care of the water resources. You have the energy provider. And what's happening there is that you can make a decision depending on the cost on where you would like to invest in. Which crop would you like to produce? How much water is available? What extra investments do you want to make, or do you need to make actually to make this production of food possible? Why I think this is also important, because it shows a little bit the difference in the cost that you make, in this case between wheat and rice. Of course, you cannot just exchange them, but there are other crops and other ways of cultivating what you could use. But why it's also interesting is if you look at the case of India, you also see this lowering of the groundwater table. Of course, that has an impact on a lot of people, not only on the farmers, but also on other people that are using the groundwater table. But another thing is, by the lowering of the groundwater table, you have to overcome a bigger head, hydraulic head, to pump up the water. So you need more energy to pump up the water. So you have this relationship that the production of food is becoming more expensive because of the lowering of the groundwater table. Another important thing here is, and I will not show that to you, but I just want to mention it, is this is a static picture. So this is just from one occasion or an average occasion. But if you look over the years, and that was mentioned also in the earlier session, you see that also because of climate change, the availability of water is becoming more and more erratic. So that also means that it's more difficult to know how much water is available. So how much extra water you need, for example, from groundwater systems or from reservoirs. So here I think there is a very strong link between climate change, so the weather, the link between the food production that you need, the link between energy, and for a part you can govern it also through economic values that are related to all those three sectors. What I also think is that the nexus, so now talking not only about the food, energy and water nexus, but also about the environmental nexus that's related to that, is that you can have a very good collaboration, and you can use the nexus as an input there on making decisions between those different sectors. In this case, energy, food and water sector. But also, I think another very strong point of the nexus is that you can use it over boundaries, sometimes administrative boundaries, sometimes transboundary issues. And I think the strong fact is that the nexus can be used also in a way how you can appreciate the different values that are there. So you're not only discussing, for example, in a water treaty, the distribution of water or the partitioning of water, but you can also discuss the potential benefits that are coming out of that. So becoming a trade on food, on energy, but also other resources that are there. So I think there's a very strong link in this water nexus that you can use actually to create collaboration. Then going a little bit to, I think, what's happening at the global level. One of them is the COP29 that took place in Baku. Also in that COP, or just before that COP, there was a report that was released, and I'm bringing this to the table here because I think there is a strong link actually to the environmental side of this nexus that we're talking about. And that has to do with the requirements of water if we're introducing renewable energy sources. I will not go into detail, but I would like to just let you show, this table tells you a little bit about the different amounts of water that you need, but also how much carbon emissions are prevented by introducing those different efforts. The reason to bring it to the table, and I think that was also the reason why it was brought to the attention in COP29, is that there is this linkage there. So you have to be aware, if you make a certain decision about how you would like to develop the reduction of emissions, that it has an impact also on the water that's required for those different measures, but also the amount of water that it can give if you introduce such a measure. So again, this nexus, I think, is an important point here. Then, just to bring it a little bit back to the ground, to ourselves as human beings, because we are also part of those decisions. These are the definitions that are sometimes used for when do you have water stress, when are you talking about water scarcity, and when do you have absolute scarcity. So those are some sort of guiding numbers. Now, if you look in the same report, you will also find that they also say that for the production of food, you need roughly between 2,000 and 5,000 cubic meters per person per year, which is already quite high if you compare that about this water scarcity issues and water stress. So you can see that this partitioning of water and where you need it in the nexus is I think, a quite strong and important one. I just took it as an example. Both my colleague Bishwa here and myself, we're living in the Netherlands. I don't know exactly how much water he's using, but I can tell you that roughly in the Netherlands, on average, we use 36 cubic meters per person per year. It's just in the household. So that's drinking water, washing, and maybe cleaning your car once every month. We don't do that too often. So then you get at numbers like this. But that shows you that there is such a big importance also of other things that we need as human beings, where we also require water for. So making decisions from the consumer side is also an important decision that we make. Also this morning there was some talks about that. This is about the water footprint, which was actually developed at our institution a long time ago. But this shows you a little bit, don't take the numbers as too absolute, but I think it shows you the difference between the choices that you make. So that has to do with food, but it also has to do with a lot of other decisions that we make as consumers, how we can think about what is required there. There's another report that I would like to ask your attention for that came out just a few months before. It's the report that's called The Economics of Water. In that Economics of Water, there are 9 recommendations. Recommendation number 2 is recommendation to see if on average, it's under discussion, we should use 1,460 cubic meters per person per year. Much lower than the numbers that you see on top. So if we want to get there, that means that we have to introduce a lot of different measures to achieve that. So there's a long way ahead, I think. In this particular report, there are some recommendations. Again, I will not go into detail, but I would like to advise you, have a look at it. I think it's quite interesting. Just a few things out of there that at least was important for me. That's from recommendation number 4. And that talks about that we need innovations, but that we also need capacity building and we need investments. Also related to that, and I would like to stress that because I know that investments, everybody knows that there's also a lot of money going on the table that's being available. One of the problems with investments that investors are looking for bankable projects. Related to bankable projects, there's a return on investment. I think that a lot of things that we're doing in the water sector, and that's required there, and that's also coming in this report, that's why I like that, is that you can't do that on the short term. You need a long term, actually, approach where you appreciate the economic and social benefits that are coming back to you in the long term. And then I'm talking about 10 to 30 years there. Another point that I would like to raise, recommendation number 7, and that's again about long term, but there I pinpointed the one on intergenerational. So how do you act between different generations and what are their values and benefits? But also the socio-economic and environmental benefits. So I would like to stress that as well. But how do you do that? So there, I think in 2020, the United Nations also proposed this accelerator framework for SDG 6, also notifying that SDG 6 is lagging behind quite a lot by achieving its targets, and that there are 5 accelerator pillars in there. One is financing, one is innovations, one is governance, one is data information, and one is capacity development. You need them all 5. You can't just work on one of them, but you will need all of them. I want to concentrate a little bit on capacity development there. Here, if we really want to make a sort of a quantum leap, or if we want to, say, get away a little bit from the slow increase and improvement that we're needing, we need a change. And I personally think, and I think there are more people that think that as well, that capacity development and capacity developing can help doing that. But one of the other problems that we're facing is we're going into new generations. Myself, some other people here in the room, we're belonging actually to a generation that's sometimes called the baby boom. We're leaving the room soon, and a lot of colleagues are leaving there already. But the new generations come in. The new generations look a little bit different at what is important and what they value. So they also require a different approach there. And coming from the water sector, what I see is that in a lot of countries, including the Netherlands, there is a lack of interest from young people in water, both in the way how they value water, but also an interest to study water. At the same time, I see the challenges in the water sector only coming bigger. So I think we need more people working in the water sector. It's not only about money, I think it's also about making the water sector more interesting for people to be there. I think we should try, and people working in the water sector here, to make it so interesting that if you have a coffee break or you're visiting your grandmother, the first thing you talk about is what you're doing in the water sector. So that is my ambition, and that's where I would like to look for, next to the fact that I think we do have to think about these investments that have a long-term return on investment. Just one example there, why I think it's a very good decision to do that. I think if you make an investment in your training career, and I think everybody here in the room have done that, that's the orange color code here. So that is when either yourself or your family or you get a loan, you do an investment in your education. That is returned in your lifetime, and then you go to, here there is a retirement age of 65. In some countries it's a little bit longer than that, or sometimes a little bit shorter. You get 3 times back what you invested in your education. But this is not only the most important part. More important is even that if you go actually to all other social benefits that you get there, so meaning better health, meaning less criminality, meaning more productivity.
Professor Moose, I'm sorry
this is
to intervene.
last slide.
Okay.
Yes?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So you see a return of investment that goes 10 times this one. So every euro or dollar that you put in ends up in $30. And then also if you look at benefits on the fiscal benefits, you also get a higher tax income and other benefits that are there for society. So in the end, that's $300 that you get back for every euro that you spend on education training. So I think on the economic side, I think it should be beneficial to do that. I know that there are some other things that may play a role in there why this is not happening as much as it should, but that would be my advice. So I think that what we're talking about today is we're trying to connect actually the water energy food nexus. I think we can do that by pushing it using the same accelerator framework that was introduced by SDG 6. Maybe something that could be a discussion later on for the afternoon is, okay, how is that now about atmospheric flow? You have heard maybe about the atmospheric rivers. I think they should also enter in this nexus because they are part of our water cycle and we should start thinking about that. Last thing, I would like to invite you, if you're interested in capacity development, we organize for the last 35 years, every 5 years, a capacity development symposium in Delft in the Netherlands. It will take place next year from 2 to 4th of July, so quite welcome. It will be a hybrid event, so you can do that either from here or you're welcome to visit us in Delft. Thank you very much for your